today's session. Oh, do I need to start over?
No.
Okay, great. Next slide. So today's session has been made possible through the collaboration of Child Care Aware, Jefferson County Public Schools, La Casita, Metro United Way, National Center for Families Learning, Play Cousins Collective, and Ready for K Family and Caregiver Action Network.
Elizabeth?
Hello, everyone. Good morning. My name is Elizabeth. I will be your Spanish interpreter. For the sake of language justice, I will begin instructions in Spanish and then repeat in English. Hola, buenos días. Mi nombre es Elizabeth y seré su intérprete de español con la Community Language Cooperative. Quiero agradecer su compromiso con la justicia del lenguaje, lo cual significa que todas las personas tienen derecho a hablar y ser escuchadas en el idioma de su corazón o en el idioma en el que se sientan más cómodos. Entonces, interpretaré esta reunión del inglés al español simultáneamente. Una vez que termine de hablar, se activará la función de interpretación. En ese momento, elija su idioma preferido en la barra de herramientas en la parte inferior de su pantalla de Zoom, presionando el icono de interpretación. Si nos acompaña desde un dispositivo móvil, haga clic en los tres puntitos a la derecha de su pantalla que dice More y desde allí podrá elegir su idioma. Si usted es bilingüe en ambos idiomas, no es necesario elegir uno. Les quiero pedir a todos, por favor, hacer pausas y hablar más lento de lo habitual para dar tiempo a la interpretación. Muchas gracias. Hello, everyone. As I mentioned, my name is Elizabeth, and I will be your Spanish interpreter with the Community Language Cooperative. I want to thank you for your commitment to language justice, which means that all people have the right to speak and be heard in the language of their heart or the language that they feel most comfortable in. Therefore, I will be interpreting this meeting simultaneously from English to Spanish. Once I finish speaking, we will turn on the interpretation function. At that time, please choose your preferred language on the toolbar at the bottom of your screen by pressing the interpretation icon. If you are joining us from a mobile device, click the three dots to the right of your screen that say More. If you are fully bilingual in both languages, you do not need to select one unless you prefer to. And I'd like to ask everyone to speak a little slower than usual and pause often to allow time for the interpretation. Thank you very much. Can the host please turn on interpretation at this time?
Sorry, I muted myself. I thought I turned it on, but I can't tell if it popped up for everybody.
It has. It's on.
Okay, thank you all.
It's on, but I am not selected as the interpreter yet.
All right, let me try again. Melissa, Paul, I might need your help. Thank you all for being patient with me. All right, Elizabeth, did that work?
No, it just ended interpretation.
I added you. Again, thank you everybody for a little bit of grace this morning. All right, let's try again. Third time a charm.
She's giving us a thumbs up.
Perfect. Thank you, Elizabeth. And thanks to all of you all for your patience with me this morning. All right. So Melissa Nelson, we'll hand it back to you.
So we'll start us off today with a poll. And on your screen, you'll see 2 questions. The first question, which of the previous Ready for K Alliance Countdown to Kindergarten virtual trainings did you attend? The options are A, October, registration and enrollment process. B, February, health requirements. C, both. Or D, neither. The second question will be, how have you engaged with any of the Countdown to Kindergarten resources? A, you've seen them. B, you've read through them. C, you've shared them with staff or other partners. D, you've shared them with families. E, I have not engaged with them. Or F, I do not know about them.
So you should see those polling questions popping up on your screen. If you have multiple screens open, they might be under something.
And we'll give you a few minutes to kind of answer those questions.
All right. There you go, Melissa.
Thank you. So it looks like we have over half of the people here today that haven't been introduced to the Countdown Kindergarten initiatives. So welcome, thank you for being here for the first time. We hope that you get a lot of information and that you are able to possibly go back and revisit those Countdown to Kindergarten trainings, especially if you find this very useful. We will go over where to find those, but you can find those on the Ready for K website, and we'll go over that in more detail. So today's agenda includes our welcome, which we just had. We'll go over the Countdown to Kindergarten calendars, supporting multilingual families in transitioning to kindergarten. We'll have a discussion about JCPS English Language Learner Services, some updates from Metro United Way. We will discuss where to find the resources, some final thoughts, and lastly, a feedback form that helps us know how to best serve you that are attending. So working agreements for today, it starts with listening for understanding. Be an active participant. Please engage with us. We welcome questions. You can put those in the chat, or if we're at a point where we're asking questions, please feel free to unmute yourself and speak. And of course, observe virtual meeting etiquette. That means keeping yourself mute until you're at a point where we're asking for conversations, and just be mindful of other people speaking. So that takes us to our community builder. It's time to get engaged. In your current role, what have you done to support families transitioning to kindergarten? What are some things that you plan on doing this summer to support those families? So please share your thoughts in the chat or feel free to unmute yourselves to speak to the group. Don't everyone talk at once.
Melissa, I'll hop in while folks are collecting their thoughts and or adding to the chat. My name is Terry Davenport. I'm with JCPS Early Childhood. So all of my work involves directly connecting services and support to students and families. But we're excited about our summer programming. This year we have our Camp Ready for K that starts on July 17th, runs through the 28th. We are ecstatic to be able to bring that back to early childhood students and the community again this year. Applications are closed, but we look forward to serving in that capacity. And I see a couple things were dropped in the chat. Emily Cornett shares that just lost it, that KET is partnering with me and my school and sharing our Let's Learn Kentucky Kindergarten Readiness Resource Hub. So thank you, Emily.
And Andrea Pike Goff said supporting community-wide outreach efforts regarding kindergarten readiness. Ashley Brandt said sharing out summer programming resources and activities. And Kimberly Broker said each month I provide or email that monthly calendar to families. I work directly with families on kindergarten registration and coordinate with Play Cousins on their back to school bash. Families who have children 4 or more receive a copy of the JCPS checklist. Thank you, Kimberly. And last, oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry. I can share briefly. This is Maria Gurin with Imagination Library of Louisville. We are sending books every month, 1 book a month to children from birth to age 5 to help them get ready for kindergarten and fill their home with books. But also, I'm really interested in learning more about how we can use our relatively large distribution list of families that are getting books to send out resources and opportunities around kindergarten and other early childhood opportunities. So I'm excited to learn more from folks on this call about what those things are and how we can make sure that Imagination Library families are aware of those.
Thank you, Maria. We appreciate that. And I hope you get some good ideas from this professional development today. Carla said, and I'm sorry, go ahead.
Good morning. My name is Margaret Nancy Johnson. Here at La Casita Center, and I'm a program coordinator. As long as with me is Jessica and
Hi, my name is Jessica. I'm a community liaison here at La Casita.
We're here to the programs and also, that we provide a company to the families in the process, several processes, and trying to connect with childhood programs as well as with JCPS studies for newcomers and in the same to all the processes and all the steps that need to take place, including sending them to or accompanying them with center, who we have also with us Ismara, who supports them through all that process with Family Health Center. And we, our model is any way that we can accompany our families, we do it, because each family is different and each family has a different needs. And to the point that the family might need, they may also have children with some type of special healthcare need. So we also accompany them through that process. And let's see, hopefully, you know, one of my
I can take over. We also have an early child program, which we have Escuelita, which is videos to help kids who have both languages, so that when they start kindergarten, they're not left behind because of the language. So we try to introduce them to them. We also have camp in the summer, and those are for families, so that kids can have a safe place to play, learn, and also see other people that, you know, speak Spanish, have their culture, where they can make connections and feel like a community and not an outsider and new here.
we also accompany families, like I said, they have a children with some type of special healthcare needs. And then it's a program that is called Una Mano Amiga, which in short we call it UMA. And through all the processes in terms of health and education, and support with planning therapists and basically all that process. So I'm not sure if you can hear me. Can you hear me by any chance? I hope you were able to hear what we were talking about. But if you have any other questions, please, we're happy to answer. Thank you.
No, thank you for sharing.
Melissa, there were a few additional items in the chat for folks to highlight. I don't know if you caught those, but we have Renee from senior master, who's a senior master leader at looks like at the preschool at early learning campus at the University of Louisville. We're glad to have you here. And another participant also talks about attending the JCPS Showcase of Schools in the fall. So again, once again, highlighting some of the things that we have shared previously as part of this community of professional learning. And I'm glad to see that folks were able to take advantage of those opportunities. Jamaica mentions that she works with Play Cousins and she goes to events and shares information about resources with the community, and has recently learned of being a part that is glad to be a part of the Ready for K movement. And so thank you, Jamaica.
Thank you, Terry. And thank you for everyone who either spoke up or mentioned something in the chat. We greatly appreciate that. So the purpose for today is about providing guidance for families across the community as they transition to kindergarten. We want to be able to provide information about kindergarten transition to community partners such as yourselves that you hopefully can share with families or find useful. We want to create consistency in messaging about kindergarten transition across the Louisville community. So now I will pass it over to Allison as she talks about the kindergarten calendars.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Allison Miller. I'm here with the National Center for Families Learning, and we have been coming up on a year of working on this project together almost, and it's been super exciting for us to come together. And as Melissa shared from the previous slide when we were going through our project purpose, this really has been a collaborative opportunity for a lot of different organizations throughout the city of Louisville to come and to weigh in and to share resources and information that we hope families will find helpful moving forward as they transition their little ones to kindergarten. And so the big portion that came from this was our countdown to kindergarten calendars. And we always like to give just a little bit of a recap every time we meet for these quarterly sessions to show you all a little bit about the kindergarten calendars, how you might be able to use them, and just try to get those gears moving in your own brains to think about how you might continue to share these with families. And from the sound of it, from just a few slides ago, it really sounds like so many of us are trying to get these touch points out with our families and help children feel like they are ready to be in kindergarten when the time comes. So we're going to go through just a little bit about the calendars here today with you all. And so you may have remembered this. We'll walk through this in just a moment. We'll show you the actual website, and Ashley Brandt is sharing that in the chat. But the Countdown to Kindergarten calendars were created with two different versions in mind. So we created a version that is meant just for practitioners. So folks like you who are here today that are going to have touch points with any families that would have a child going to kindergarten next year, or who might have infants and toddlers who will eventually be in the kindergarten system in the upcoming future. And so those calendars for practitioners tend to have a little bit more information so that you know where to find things and how to utilize the different things like the showcase of schools or having opportunities to enroll and get to local schools like JCPS. And it's going to have additional details and links. The other calendar that we designed follows the practitioner calendar perfectly. So each month will have the same type of content, but it's going to be written more family friendly. And so we really strive to make sure that it's written at a 6th grade reading level so that it is accessible to all of our families. And it's actually available in 8 different languages. So we will be able to go through those here in just a moment, but they are English, Spanish, French, Somali, Nepali, Kinyarwanda, and I'm going to blank on the last ones, but we will show you those here in just a moment. And as you can see, this is a page that shows you the family engagement calendar. We actually will have it color coded. And so as you look through the calendar as a practitioner, you'll see that there will be activities that are meant specifically for 3 to 5-year-olds to do with their families. But then you'll also see that there are activities that families can do that impact that year right before kindergarten. And those might be things like enrolling and getting ready to enter the JCPS school system. It might be health and dental requirements that are needed for all schools when you come to Louisville. And then we will also have some activities in green that are part of that kindergarten transition process. And so again, you'll be able to see that when we take a peek here in a second. We'll give you a rundown of our current month, which is May. And so you'll be able to see these calendar features. And so we have summer here because I think that's on everybody's mind with Derby wrapping up and the weather starting to get a little bit warmer outside. We definitely have summer on the brain. And so you'll see that we have the actual countdown. So if you open this up as a practitioner, you would see summer, it's 2 months till kindergarten. And this has some different activities that you can see the information by type, by age, and by time. So if it's information by type, that's where you'll see information on transition processes. That's where you'll see different activities to support development. If you're looking at it by age, you'll see ages 3 to 5 or the year prior to kindergarten. And then if you see information by time, that means it's something that can be done anytime or it's something that can be done month by month. And so as we look at this summer calendar, we can see that it does have information that you can use for families that have children between the ages of 3 and 5. For this one specifically, we talk about communities offering summer programming. And so encouraging your families to sign up for things like the library summer reading program. The Louisville Cultural Pass is a really important and wonderful opportunity that we have here in Louisville. And then things like Dr. Davenport was talking about just a few moments ago. Students might be able to go to Camp Kindergarten, Camp Ready for K with JCPS. So again, this is just things that you can remind your families about and help them find different resources around the city. And then if you look in the green band, we can see that there is a kindergarten transition process. And when we look at those individual bullets, which I know might be a little bit small on your screen, but hopefully you'll get the information from me. You can see that back to school supplies are going to be mentioned. And so we know for some families with kind of the economy, the way that it has been, and with the prices of things rising, they might be looking for things like giveaways. They might be looking for community partners that can help them with those. So that way it's not a huge burden right before they go back to school for the year. And so you can help your families find access to those. And then you can also have families reach out to their family resource centers, their Frisky coordinators at their specific schools that they'll be attending. And they can help with things like clothing assistance. They can talk about uniforms. They can also help with things like supplies and appointments and health screenings that are going to be happening. And then the other thing that you can encourage families to do if they have a kindergartner that's getting ready to go to kindergarten is to just drive by or walk by or ride by the school that their child will be attending this summer. Pointing at the building, talking about how your child will be going there is a really helpful thing for that transition. And it helps your child feel a little bit more at ease when they're able to see exactly where they're going to be this fall. And so this is just a page from the calendar. And then I am going to have Becky switch to our next slide. And we have this focus on May. And so again, you can see in the chat that Ashley Brandt had shared the website for you to access these. You can get them in all of the different languages. But if you were to scroll down into May, this is where you would be able to see our little May calendar. And so if you are here today for the first time and you're wondering, how can I utilize this calendar moving forward? We would like you to kind of focus on May and just really think about sharing this specific information. So ask your families, hey, have you received your school assignment for kindergarten? Make sure they know where they're going and how to get in touch with that school. And also encourage them to start signing up for their school social media accounts and to watch out for information about back to school transition events. Social media is all over right now, and different schools will have Instagram pages, they'll have Facebook accounts, that type of thing, and that's how they get a lot of information out. And so you can see on the other side of the screen, we have our year prior to kindergarten, where you can talk about asking different and answering different questions about where your child lives. And then you can also look at books about school. And then as you're transitioning again, you can look for Camp Ready for K. As Dr. Davenport mentioned, that time has closed at this point. But next year, as you're looking for this, you can be on the lookout for Ready for K links. And then you can watch for information from your schools for welcome events. And so one of the things we wanted to leave you with today before we get into our next section is some touch points that you can have. If you have families that are wondering what are some books that we can read together to get ready to go to kindergarten, we have just a wonderful plethora of books on the screen right here that you can see that Becky and I were able to kind of pick out. Many of these are used with JCPS and are available. Some of them are available bilingually as well. And so if you're looking for a book for a family, we recommend one of these. And then we do have a couple other additional resources that we wanted to call out that might be new to folks here on this call, but they're definitely new to the website because our work group has worked on creating them and getting them translated into all of the different languages. We have our health requirements, which is on the left. So you can find that resource on the website and see what families need to go to kindergarten. You can also see the communication toolkit that we worked very hard on, and it will have ways that you can share information out on different types of social media, how you can craft different emails to send to your families. And it also has a wonderful graphics bundle that you can use to share the cute little icons that you've seen up until this point. And then we also have a one-pager that we kind of listened to feedback to the community and found out that a lot of folks had questions about toileting skills before going to kindergarten. So we made a one-pager on some different things that families can practice at home to try and get their child feeling a little bit more confident as they go to kindergarten. And then Ashley Brandt has shared in the chat where you can find the communications toolkit. So thank you so much, Ashley. That's super helpful. Oh, sorry. And Becky is going to walk us through that. So when you go to the Ready for K Alliance, you can see our community resources. We've got our countdown to kindergarten. And you can click there for learn more. And then you can view the family engagement calendar, which will be family facing. And then you can also see there's that health requirements one pager, the toileting one pager, and the bilingual and multilingual international families information, which we're about to get into here in just a few moments. And then here are the resources for you. You can see your own practitioner calendar, as well as the communication toolkit, and that will have those cute little graphic bundle that you can use. And then if you are someone that's new here and you're curious about trainings that we've done in the past, you can go to our professional development page, and you can see recorded Zooms just like today from our webinars. So you can go back and get that information if you want to learn more about things that we've talked about in the past. Thanks, Becky. And so we mentioned that these are in the top 8 languages that are found here in Louisville in the JCPS school system. And so we have our family facing countdown to kindergarten calendar has these resources available in Arabic, English, French, Kinyarwanda, Nepali, Somali, Spanish, and Swahili. And if you're wondering why Swahili is in bold, it's because when you look at our page here on the screen, we're showing you an example of what Swahili looks like in our countdown to kindergarten. And so this is August. And so it directly mimics everything from English. And again, this would be family facing, but it's also going to mimic everything that you would find in your practitioner calendar, but it's more family friendly. And then I am going to open this up to Cassie Marshall from our La Casita Center, and she is going to share with us a little bit about some videos that are coming soon as a part of this work group and the grant that we have for transitioning to kindergarten.
Thank you, Allison. Good morning, everyone. So what is our next step for this work group? That is going to be the creation of videos. These are going to be made by local families who have already gone through the kindergarten transition process, and the audience is for local families who are either entering that transition process or are sort of in the middle of that. These videos are going to cover a range of topics. We're really going to let our local families guide these topics. They will be pulled from the Countdown to Kindergarten calendar, but you may see everything from the physical forms that need to be filled out, what that registration process looks like, to suggestions from families of what they do with their kids at home or when they're running errands to help aid in this transition process. This content initially is going to be provided by Play Cousins Collective as well as La Casita Center. So we expect to have videos both in English and Spanish for our families. And then from there, Metro United Way is going to produce those videos, and they will end up on a dedicated YouTube playlist on Metro United Way's channel. The hope is that our community organization, so you all, can share these videos with your families through any of your regular communication channels. So if that's a newsletter, if it's texting the YouTube link directly to families, if it's sharing it on your social media, we really want to make this easy and accessible for everyone. And the ultimate goal is to provide even more inclusion. We understand that the Countdown to Kindergarten calendars themselves are very text heavy. And so the goal for this is to really make sure we're including all of our families in the community and that everyone has access to this information. So if anyone on our call today, if any organizations hear this and think, oh, I would be really interested, we have families who would be fantastic at helping provide videos for this series, please do reach out to us. You can contact Melissa at Metro United Way. She's on the call with us today and waving. Thank you, Melissa. We would love to have anyone else join us in the creation of these videos in the coming months and throughout the summer. From here, I'm going to pass it over to Dr. Terry Davenport with JCPS ECE.
Again, good morning, everyone. As you can tell, we're excited about all of the resources that are at your fingertips from the Countdown to Kindergarten calendar. So at this time, we'd love to hear from you. Again, we've been doing this work for a few months now. How have you been able to utilize the Countdown for Kindergarten resources in your organization, your childcare, your program, or school? Feel free to drop those thoughts in the chat, or now's a great time to come off mute and share.
Well,
Or
I
if
can,
this is your first time seeing these resources, how do you visualize or how do you think you would be able to use these resources in your current work?
well, I can jump in here, Cassie, again from La Casita Center. I know I've shared in previous PD sessions, so this might be a repeat for some of you. But at La Casita Center, we are using our social media to share out PDFs of each month's Countdown to Kindergarten calendar. And on top of that, each month during our in-person family resource days, when we have lots of families come through the center and are on site, we use that as an opportunity not only to share the calendar again with them, but to also tie in a little activity. So as you saw, Allison shared, each month has some suggestions of activities or things families can do to prepare for that kindergarten transition. So we will pull something from that to give families to take home. For example, May, they talked about practicing knowing your address, your phone number. So we created just little printable booklets for our kids to take home where their families can talk about those things. They can color and draw and use it as a way to prepare for this transition.
Thank you, Cassie. I heard from another provider that they are really highlighting on their social media platforms. They're taking little nuggets from the calendar. It could be 1 or 2 sentences, and they're dropping them right into their communications out to their families and the community that they serve. So know that that's available to you as well, where you can go in and, some folks were, as they were highlighting some of the different opportunities that were open to families for the summer, as they were getting some of this information, they were dropping it into their platform, into their social media platforms, reminding parents about, recently we did a training on health requirements. And I saw some of the organizations that were promoting that out as well, about reminding families to, get their immunizations and different things like that.
Hi, I'm Jessica from La Casita. It's just a little bit more to add to what Cassie just said. My work is normally answering the phones in La Casita, so a lot of the people that call in, the first thing I ask whether their kids are already in school. If not, that's whenever I give them the information depending on the age. So information like this is like we need it every day. Is updated as much as possible. As soon as I get information, I add it to our protocol so that we can share it with our families and they can be up to date. So it's all of this is a lot. But also I just wanted to also make a comment about the website. You guys said that it was for the sixth grade reading level. And I just wanted to point out that there's a lot of families that don't have any school, don't know how to read, don't know how, that's never been to school. So even sixth grade, it's too much. Add in the internet and the language, it's even more barriers. So having this helps me to help them navigate it. And if it's in Spanish, it's even better. But I do think like flyers or stuff that it goes online, it should be more more pictures, more like stuff so that they can see, oh, that's where I get that information, and then go deeper into it. Because if they just see words or a whole bunch of paragraphs, then they're just gonna ignore it or not pay attention to it. And I think that's what happens with a lot of kids coming home with papers that are even in Spanish, but they don't know what it means, even in the Spanish, because they didn't go to school, so it's not the proper Spanish. It is the Spanish that they learn speaking. So it's different, and it's hard to make everyone understand that part.
Thank you so much, number one, for being that liaison to get information out. We really appreciate that. And thank you for the feedback. Those are certainly things that we will consider as we continue this work. Friends, I know that we are short on time, so I want to be mindful of that. Please continue to drop those ways that you have used this resource in the chat. Again, it's extremely helpful, as Ashley pointed out. It's extremely helpful to hear what others are doing, so that will encourage folks that have maybe not taken the opportunity to utilize some of the things that you have done. Thank you so much. And I am handing it off to, I believe it's Becky. Am I handing it back to you?
Yes, thank you, Terry.
You're welcome.
And so as Terry said, we do want everyone to find ways that they can use these resources. And so we want, to issue a call to action to ask people to either print or to share the resources with families, to share the content from the calendars via your regular communication channels. We do know that it's text heavy, which is why we really encourage people to break it down for folks into tiny nuggets on social media, so that it is a little bit more digestible. And then to also, just think about, once the videos are ready, that's another way we're trying to make the content more accessible. So to also share those with your social media. So we really appreciate everybody's work in trying to get these resources to our families and to other community partners who aren't here with us today. And so I am going to talk just a little bit about accessing JCPS language services, and to help people understand what that process looks like for our multilingual families, and what services are available in our local school district. Again, this content is specific to JCPS. And so that is our largest school district. And so that's what we're choosing to focus on today. Into the 21-22 school year, JCPS did adopt a new policy called the Certified Oral and Written Language Support Policy. And the policy talks about how for formal communication, that the school district must provide certified interpreters and translators. And so that's really important to understand. The policy does not require a certified interpreter or translator for all communication. It is specifically for formal communication, and certified interpreters and translators are accessed in very specific ways in JCPS. And so we're going to talk a little bit about what that looks like, so that when you are talking to families, you can help them understand what the process is and what that looks like. So in terms of formal communication versus informal communication, the formal communication is where a translator, a certified translator, is required. And so that's any kind of formal meeting, a special education meeting or an IEP meeting, a parent-teacher conference. Anytime there are documents related to registration, application, enrollment, school calendars, report cards, all of those things are supposed to be translated for families. If a school is making a phone call to a family concerning a discipline issue, they are supposed to engage a certified interpreter. But there are other types of informal communication where school district is allowed to use bilingual staff, or they're allowed to use machine translation systems like Google Translate. And so if a teacher is just trying to learn a few words of a family's home language so that they can greet that family, that's considered informal communication, and it's okay for them to go talk to a bilingual staff member or to use Google Translate. If a teacher is just trying to send a note home, a specific note telling a family something great that a student did that day, that's another space where it's considered informal communication, and it's okay to use machine translations. So families do need to understand that it's not 100% of the time that they will have a certified interpreter or translator. The school district specifies that it's specifically for formal communication. And so JCPS Language Services does have a really nice website. It is available to the public. It is available to families to an extent, but it definitely tells a story about what's available. And so you will see that there's a green tile that is a parent tab. That is also a great tab for all of us as community partners, because there are resources there that we can connect our families to. And so we want folks to know, that these services are available, but most of the services have to be accessed by a JCPS employee. So if a family needs in-person interpretation, they cannot access that themselves. They have to go to the school, contact the school, contact an office within JCPS, and then those folks will contact the interpreter and provide that service. And the same thing is true for over the phone interpreting or Zoom interpretation. All of that has to be accessed first by a JCPS employee. And so that does, in my experience, tend to be a frustration for some family members, but school district employees have to have an access code. And that's the reason families can't just access it on their own, because it has to be affiliated and connected with the school. So I hope that makes sense. We are going to play a game in just a minute to allow you to look at this website a little bit and just familiarize yourself with what's on it. In terms of on-demand interpretation, the local school district has moved to a model where they contract with that, and they contract with an on-demand interpretation service. There are so many languages in our school district, and so it is difficult to have, folks on hand to interpret, in those languages all the time on demand. And so this makes it so that every school district employee has access truly on a moment's notice to interpreters in the languages they need. And so they can access those interpreters either by phone or there's actually an app. And so school district employees can put the app on their phone or on an iPad and have that available whenever they're interacting with families. In terms of an actual in-person interpreter, that has to be done several days in advance. And that's why at this point, the district is really encouraging people to use this on-demand interpretation service and to use the phone and the app so that all families can communicate in their preferred languages. And again, just reiterating, families have to request the interpreter, but the school employee is the one who has to initiate the use of the service. And so it's important for families to understand that, they make the request, but then they're going to have to wait a minute while somebody else actually accesses the service. Another resource that JCPS has created that is really important for us to know about as practitioners, they have created these I Speak cards in 21 different languages, and they are supposed to be an aid for families to use in requesting language support. And so I got the Somali example here on the screen. They all follow the exact same format. They say, my student's name is blank. My student goes to this school. Will you obtain a certified interpreter to help us communicate? And then there's actually the phone number right there on the card for the employee to see. And so it's written in English. The text is also in, like I said, 21 different languages. And so this is directions for district staff on how to access language support. Anytime a district employee sees one of these cards, if it's in person or hears, these messages, they are supposed to say, please wait while I access language support. And so that's kind of a catchphrase that it's important for us to communicate to families that we work with, to know that that's what they should hear, that this person is going to access language support. JCPS does recognize that not all families have gone to school and that they can't read this. So there are also a series of I Speak card videos where they kind of talk families through it and, help families understand what the process is. So these are available on JCPS's website. Anyone can print them off and can give them to the families that they're working with so that they understand the process for accessing language services. And Ashley has dropped both of these links into the chat for us. And so we are just going to do a little scavenger hunt on that website so that you have an opportunity to take a look at it yourselves. Thanks, Ashley. One of the things we also had talked about, which I forgot to mention, is trying to keep up with a piece of paper in today's world is not always easy, but so many people do have smartphones. So people can also take a picture of that I Speak card and just have it on their phone so that anytime that they are interacting with someone from JCPS, they can just show them that on their phone. So thanks so much. So if you all would, I just gave you all the, head to this website. We are just going to play a quick game just so that people can familiarize themselves with what is on here. And so you know where to find things. And so I do have a couple of questions for you. The first one is, after English, what are the top 5 languages, typo on my slide, languages spoken by JCPS students? And so if you would please see if you can find the top 5 on the Language Services website and either unmute yourself and read them off to us or drop that into chat. But what are the top 5 languages spoken by our JCPS students? Pausing just a minute to give people a chance to find them. Thanks. We've got a couple of people who have found them and dropped them into chat. They are Spanish, Arabic, Swahili, Kinyarwanda, and Nepali. And so JCPS updates that list every year, but you can pretty consistently find it on their website. In terms of translated documents, those are the things that get translated first, just because they are the most needed. Second question, there are 3 ways that families can access language services for school-related matters. 3 ways, what are the 3 ways that families can access language services for school-related matters? Again, it's on the website, and I'll give you a hint, you're looking for a flyer. The answer to that question is on a flyer that you can actually print out and give to families. Ashley has given you a hint in the chat. Thank you, Ashley. Again, you can unmute yourself if you find the answer, or you can type your answer in the chat, whatever you're more comfortable with. Sorry, I'm trying to scroll. Jessica has found it on the flyer. They are by visiting the school, by making a phone call or sending a note. I'm just going to show you really quickly where to find those flyers. So it's language support information for parents. It was under that green parent tile, and you can see that the school district is providing this flyer in many different languages. But again, this is something that you all can print and share with families. And so it just explains to families, how to access those services. Again, it is very text heavy, so we might have to support families, but the resources are there and are available. And then the last question: in what language should families complete all official forms and documents for JCPS? Amy is going to talk about this a little bit more later. Jamaica said in chat, the one that they are comfortable with. That actually is not the case, because we're talking about official forms. Jessica said their native languages, also not the case. That would be our hope, but families actually have to complete official forms and documents in English. And so families may be provided with a translated copy of the document, but it is requested that what families actually fill out is the English form of the document. And so oftentimes families will get two documents. The translated one has a note at the top that requests that families actually return the English document. And if they don't, JCPS won't send it back, but it is requested that it's the English document. So that's important, again, for us to know as practitioners so that we can support families. And then we have created a new resource, which Allison gave you a preview of earlier on the website. This is meant to be for families. It's a little bit of information about how to access the things that we just talked about, also some registration requirements for JCPS, and then some information about English as a second language services. And so on that note, I am going to get ready to hand this off to Amy Whitehead, who is joining us from JCPS today. And Amy is going to talk about English language learner identification and services that are available to families. Amy?
Becky. Good morning, everybody. I hope everybody is doing well. This is lots of great information. I'm learning things, so I really appreciate this collaboration. Okay. So as you can see here on the slide, the first thing that has to happen is the family has to be registered into the student information system before they can actually enroll into a school. So the three ways that can happen, if they're able to navigate the website and somehow find that online registration themselves, that is one way that can happen. They can either do that themselves. Sometimes schools will send them the registration link if they ask for help there. Practitioners like you all could also help them with this online registration. The next option is if for some reason the family doesn't have, an email address or access to internet, whatever the case may be, they can actually walk into really any school. And if they have with them the required documents, every school should have up to 3 what's called school registrars that can take the family's information and sort of bypass that registration link itself and go ahead and build what's called a household in the student information system directly. So that is something that's possible. Every school is different and has different, comfort level of their registrars on whether or not that's something they do on a regular basis. So it is possible that they walk in to that school and they end up just getting that link right there, the online registration link, which I don't know that I don't think that I sent that to you all, but it is on the website. I can make sure to share that with Becky and she can send it out to you all so you have that direct link. And then another way that families can get support is if they are attached to one of the local refugee agencies, we actually will go through the process with them. And for them, we will build that household directly in what's called Infinite Campus. And so we sort of do what school staff is able to do as well. We have a team here that's able to do that. And we will go through the whole process with them, submit applications on their behalf, complete the required information that's needed for registration in order to get them to school. Okay. Regardless of which of those three ways it happens with that registration piece of it, all schools would do the enrollment. So if it's, for example, we're focusing on rising kinders, children going into kindergarten, they would have to wait until we submit the application on their behalf. They have to get a school placement, and then they would go to the school, and then the school would then help them complete a home language survey. Every single student has to do the home language survey. It's not just for multilingual families. And I'll go ahead and be honest that I think some schools, because it is the very first clue for our department to know whether or not this is a potential English learner, they sort of sometimes think this is only for multilingual families, but it is for every single student that enrolls in a JCPS school. Okay. If the family does come through the refugee agency, we would actually administer that home language survey to them during that appointment. And we would have that on file and update that information in the student information system for the school. It is possible the school might also ask them to complete one, but we would have already done that for them if they were attached to the refugee agency. Okay. Go to the next slide. Okay. I believe, I'm not sure if Becky mentioned the home language survey, but this is what it looks like. This is a required form. It is a standalone form. It shouldn't be, there was an old form where it was a very tiny section on the back of just a regular student information form, but it really should be this standalone form because this very clearly outlines for them the reason the survey is being administered, what it means if they declare another language other than English, and sort of details our obligation to screen the student to see if they qualify for additional services at school. You see there on the screen that it is specific to a student. So if you have a family that has multiple children, they will have to complete a form for each individual child. Let's see, one other important thing to note actually before you switch it is that, oh gosh, if only, for example, there are 4 questions. If they speak, if they're already bilingual, if they were to put English and Spanish, we would note that in the system as Spanish so that we could make sure we screen them to see if they qualify for services. It could be that they're already proficient and that they don't need the services. That's what the screener would tell us. And I'll talk more about the screener here in a moment. If they only put Spanish on one of the questions, we would still update that as Spanish so that we can screen them to make sure we're not missing any students that do need services. Okay, you can go ahead and switch. Oh. And as Becky mentioned, we do provide translated home language surveys as a reference for parents to understand what they're filling out. School staff, again, has access to LanguageLine and can sort of step them through that if they aren't able to read their native language. So those supports are there. But it is requested, as Becky said, that they complete that form on an English form. And the reason being is that it is a required document for their cumulative file that follows them to no matter where they go, if they switch schools, if they go to a different county in Kentucky, if they go out of state, that form needs to be in English so that any school is able to see that information and understand the information. Okay, there's a lot of text on here, but I thought it was important to make sure that you all have the full picture here. So multilingual families can choose to schedule a screening appointment at our intake center prior to starting school, but they are not required to do so. And the reason I want to make sure I say that is because there are new people in school buildings that maybe haven't worked in the school system before. And if they have this encounter with a family that is speaking a different language, there was an old practice that we have moved away from that where they were told, oh, you have to go to the ESL office first before coming to school. No, they do not. It is their right. We are not allowed to delay enrollment due to simply a language difference. So I just want to make sure that you guys know that so that you're able to tell families and advocate for them so they can advocate for themselves, that they are allowed to go to school before coming for a screening to see if they qualify for services. Okay. That's just a repeat there on the second bullet that the school should be having the family complete a home language survey. The reason why that is important is that if a family is able to register themselves, get enrolled in school, but then they submit a home language survey that has a language other than English, if my office was not already aware of them, or they didn't find out through the community contacts they have about our office, the school will update that language in the student information system. And then my team is able to run this report that tells us the names of every single student in the district who has whose families have declared a language other than English. What this allows my team to do is to reach out to those families who did not come to us first so that we can then schedule them for a screening appointment here at our office so that we can, well, I'll talk about the process on the next few slides. If for some reason we find out that a family is not able to, they might have a transportation hardship, they just, might have started a new job and they really can't make it during the week, whatever the case may be. I do have a small team of traveling facilitators, is what I call them, that in very special cases, we're able to screen the student at school as well. And then we would just talk with the family over the phone. We could set up a virtual meeting. There are ways to make sure that we are supporting families with whatever needs they might have when it comes to this identification process for services. Next slide. This information is also on that resource that Becky showed you prior to this segment starting. These are required enrollment documents. Every school will ask for these things when the student goes there. If the family comes to us first, these are the same things we ask for, okay? So we need proof of the child's birth certificate. It can be an I-94, whatever it is they have that documents that I am the guardian, this is my child, we accept those, anything that would show sponsorship papers, things like that. Proof of family's address. It could be their lease agreement, a recent utility bill, and I'll tell you more details about that next. And then the parent or guardian's identification, whatever that looks like for them. And it is important to note that if they don't have some of these things or any of these things, we will work with the family to still get the student screened and help them submit an application. We can put things in the information system, mark them as temporary, and then when the family gets more settled, they can then provide the school with their most up-to-date information. So specifically that proof of address If we have a family that comes and the name on the utility bill doesn't match the guardian's name, and they tell us we're living with a family member, that is okay. We aren't going to tell them, no, it has to have your name on it. And schools shouldn't either. They have a process for helping families complete proper paperwork to document their living situation. This is just an overview of the process that would happen when a family does come to our office for an appointment. We administer an initial assessment. It's a language screener. We do a parent interview, and then there's an intake side that's really more of the data entry side for our office. And then I'll get into details on the next slide. So what does that initial assessment look like? So you all are aware and you can sort of explain to the family what to expect. For rising kindergartners, it is always going to be a one-on-one assessment just to screen their English proficiency. There are 4 domains on the test that we screen their English proficiency: reading, writing, listening, and speaking. If the student is able to come to our office between now and December, we would only actually be doing the listening and speaking domains because it's not developmentally appropriate to give them the reading and writing yet. If for some reason the family arrives sometime after December, it would be all 4 domains, because at that point, again, developmentally, they have had some exposure. We would like to think they've had some exposure to instruction in writing and reading. They might not. And we always tell families it's okay, because sometimes they panic and they say, we just got here, they don't know English. And we tell them that's okay. We still have to screen. And then this will show that how they perform at the very beginning of their school experience. And then every year they take an assessment to check in on that progress until they attain full English proficiency. The length of the test really depends on the child's proficiency in English, but typically 15 to 45 minutes for the assessment itself. The full process with the interview is longer than that, depending on, the experience or the time of year. Okay. Kindergarten students automatically qualify for services. That's important to note, because they can't technically screen proficient initially, even if they get a perfect score on it. That's the way the State Department has it written into regulation. So that's why it's that way. So they automatically qualify. However, parents do have the right to decline those services. So if their child gets a perfect score, they say, well, I don't really feel like my child needs this. So they sign a specific form, and then the teachers at the building just sort of monitor that student's progress to make sure they are progressing. We can go to the next one. So the parent interview, again, so that parents are sort of prepared for the types of things we're going to ask them, because I'll be honest, it can get sort of awkward, especially if we have to do this over the phone and parents aren't sure why we're asking them these particular questions. So what it looks like is the parent will sit down one-on-one with a facilitator, is what we call them, who either speaks their language, or my team also accesses the on-demand interpreting services. So it doesn't matter what language they speak, we're able to communicate with every family. What they will do is they will confirm the contact information. They will, look at the provided documents and make sure everything's spelled correctly, so that we can update it in the student information system to match. We'll confirm the home language. Sometimes when that report that I mentioned earlier, we just get the name of the student and their language. But when we screen them here, we go ahead and have them complete that home language survey just to confirm it. Because sometimes we'll find out that the family will fill it out one way and the school will put it in. The family gets here, and when we explain further what it means, because sometimes schools either don't effectively explain it, or they just send it home and it comes back. There's not really a conversation. Families will change it sometimes. So they are able, that's why we confirm it here to make sure that this is a service that they feel like their student needs to access. We do ask them about their entry date into the country. All that does is determine for us their immigrant and refugee status. That's really just tied to a compliance and state funding purpose. It is not in any way, shape, or form to check on their legal status. We will never ask them about that. But this question can sometimes feel like that for families. So we make sure, I want to make sure you all know that that's the reason why we ask them. We don't go into those details. If they do ask us in the moment, we try to explain it to them. But again, it's sort of one of those educational compliance things that doesn't always translate, I guess, if you would. We do ask about the student's country of birth. That is also simply to define that immigrant refugee status for us. We ask about previous academic history of the student, if applicable. For rising kindergartners, if they're here now, they don't have an extensive academic history. So it's usually a pretty straightforward, quick interview for students of this age. If you work with a family that has a rising kindergartner and they also have other, siblings that aren't in the school system yet, that academic history would be a little more extensive for the older students. And we do schedule like entire families for appointments sometimes, if that's the case. What else? In that same interview, the services are explained to the parent, and that's when we give them the right to decline the services. Sometimes they decline it right away. Sometimes they want to wait for their student scores to see if they want to accept or decline the services. But all of that is part of the interview piece. Okay, and then that third piece, we just call it intake, which really in my mind, the whole process, the whole thing is the intake of the family. This is where we do the data updates in the student information system. We have a certain way that we have to enter that information for the State Department for reporting purposes. And if it's a student who's not in middle or high school, because those are just served by your resides address, it's not a placement type of situation. But for rising kindergartners, there is an application that we would submit on their behalf. We ask them about their school choices, which I should have said that in the interview. That's part of the interview part. We will pull up the map for them. We'll show them the schools available, and they will rank order them. And sometimes they just do it by distance because they aren't sure, what the school is like, or they have family members, whatever the case may be. We do guide them through rank ordering those schools. Once that application is submitted, we get a placement email, so we know where the students are being placed. Although it should be the school itself that reaches out to the family to send a welcome letter, or if they call, every school does that a little bit differently, but there is a welcome letter that every school has access to. If families don't hear from a school about a school placement, I would say within 3 days of the appointment with us, if they aren't already in school, the family can always call us back to ask us, what school did I get? And then we tell them, and then we encourage them and remind them, take those same documents you brought to us to the school, make sure they get copies of it. And then the families will sometimes go before the school has an opportunity to call them, or whatever the case may be. If the family goes because they found out from us, we try to let the school know, hey, this family called, they're coming to you because they really need to go ahead and get started, get their kids started in school. So we try to let schools know, but that doesn't always happen. So for your knowledge, if a family does try to go to a school and has some sort of encounter where the school is confused or no, you don't go here, we always let the family know, call us back or tell the school to call us if they need help. So we do try to help be a liaison between schools and families, because there's so much information all the time going back and forth. So we just try to help as much as we can. Let's see. Another piece that we do just to keep schools informed and in the loop, we will send an email to the ESL teachers there, to the administration, to front office staff, letting them know, here's the students. We don't put their names in the email, but we let them know about the student, that we've identified them as an English learner, and we upload the parent interview sheet into the information system so the schools can see that. Let's see. Oh, and I didn't mention, once the student does get to the school is required to create what's called a program service plan. And that really should be done in collaboration with the parents and also talking with the classroom teacher. And typically that plan is written around whatever their scores were on that initial screener. And then if there is any other background experience with school, all of that is considered when building this plan.
Hello, this is Mildred. And just with a concern.
I'm not able to hear.
Okay. This is Mildred once again, and just with a concern here with the service, the survey with English. My concern and our concern is basically that this will put children behind, because typically they are considered what we have seen in the past is that because children have a second language, and then for some reason they are always put and left behind in terms of education. And if all the teachers will have access to this to a certain extent, I see the reasoning that you want to know, what is going on, but then you are already labeling a child before they even start the school or start working with the teachers. That will be something that will be concerning for me, and I think for us here.
Yes, the held back, because I've seen it. It happens where people, or if the student does the test and their language is not to where they're supposed to be, so then they're held behind. But that's stuff that they already did, so they're redoing the same math, the same different social studies, but like the materials are still the same. It's just the language, and kids are getting held back because of it.
Okay, I can't speak to any specific situations in terms of that, but in terms of your comment about labeling a student and that being concerning, it's actually a federal requirement that we screen students, and that all stems back to a Supreme Court case, because it makes districts understand that we have an obligation to still provide the same access to a core curriculum, tier 1 curriculum, for all students. So that's the reasoning behind this screening and informing the school that you've got a student that is, multilingual and may or may not need, every student is different, and the way that plan is built as well. And maybe if I talk through some of this slide, that will help answer some of your questions or set you at ease. So the services that they get to develop their English is taught by a certified and highly skilled ESL teacher. They are endorsed. They are trained to teach students to develop their English language development is what it is. Sorry, kind of fumbling over that phrasing there. They also will have their classroom teacher, what would be called their homeroom teacher. So the structure of the services can sometimes look like that ESL teacher coming into the classroom and supporting the classroom teacher with a whole group lesson. They look at lesson plans together. They build in language supports for the students that are learning English. So it really shouldn't be that they are penalized for not knowing English. It is that they might know the information in Spanish, right? So those supports that the ESL teacher puts in place should help bridge that gap with their literacy and numeracy in their home language to English. So if students are getting held back, they're not allowed to get held back for the simple fact that they are an English learner. That is not allowable. Does that help with your concerns, or do you have additional questions about that?
I think, I mean, yeah, I understand the process, but I
Mhm.
feel like in that way, people are already being selected. Like, I can see it, somebody coming in just for a couple students, putting them on the side, or if it's one student, it doesn't matter. The student's gonna feel being called out, or like they're being singled out. I don't agree with it being in the same room just because of that, because kids are developing. There's a lot of racism. There's a lot of, um, issues going on, and I
Mhm.
feel like if there's trauma, there's a lot of kids that come with trauma, and a
Mhm.
lot of them are refugees that come with that, and with it, they're just trying to blend in. They're trying to
Mhm.
be normal, be kids, and be like every other kid trying to learn language. And when you put them in the spot like that, even though it's helping, um, it it could be more damaging, because then they don't want to come to school because they're being singled out, they're being pointed out. I just, that's my concern.
Mm. I understand exactly where you're coming from with that. But again, every school is staffed so differently. Our ESL teachers are aware of situations like that. That's part of why we do the academic history to figure out if there are any other, situations that schools should be aware of before they go to school. And then how that's handled once they go to school could look very different depending on their staffing, in terms of the support or that structure of the service model. That's the only, sorry, I don't have much more in the way of, comfort in terms of that. I do want to make sure I also say that some schools do have, a lot of schools have bilingual teachers or bilingual associate instructors that can help assist with that transition. However, like I said, every school is staffed differently, and the goal of the program is to learn English. So parents shouldn't be, alarmed or worried if there isn't someone in the building that speaks their language, because there are those resources for staff to use. And then we also have a team here in our department that works directly with schools, especially the schools that don't have, if for example, their position is not filled. They'll work with the classroom teachers of the specific students that they have concerns with, in terms of with the school being concerned, oh my gosh, how am I going to communicate with this student if I don't speak their language? I think it comes from a place of wanting to be able to help and not being sure how to help. But we do have resources to help the students learn English. Okay. If you would like to support parents in helping understand what the service could look like, again, I think I've already kind of mentioned some of this, but every school has different staffing and service models. That program service plan really should be written within the first 30 days of school if they start school at the beginning of the year. And they should be communicating that with the parents. That's the time for the parents to ask questions if they have any. Some things they could ask would be, how many days a week will my child receive services? What type of environment will the services be provided? So that sort of speaks to your concern. If a parent asks that, then the school can explain to them what it will look like. And if the parent has a concern about, well, I don't want this to be, how it looks for my child, that would be the time for them to voice that concern. Parents could ask, how can I help my child at home? And generally every fall, schools do an information session specifically for multilingual parents to come to the school and hear more about the program, and then also ask some questions. And that's where they give suggestions about how they can help at home. They can ask anytime, but there is a dedicated time in the year where they will invite multilingual families to participate in a session to ask questions specifically about those services. think I've got one more slide and then I probably am going to have a lot of questions. Just to give you all a general timeline and what early screening could look like for rising kinders. Again, I sort of touched on some of this, but this sort of recaps the information. If we screen the student between March and the set deadline in August, that just means the start of the school year, whenever that is. Services will begin day one. So we already have them screened. We have updated the information in the system so that the ESL teachers can build their schedules and roster around the rosters and start giving students services right away. If the student happens to start after the school year, depending on the timing of when they're screened, it really should, we try to do a quick turnaround of that data entry and communication to the schools so we can say, you have, you know, 5 new kindergarten students, and then they will start to work to build that program service plan. And they don't, you know, sometimes schools tell us about kids, right? So they already have an idea that this student will probably qualify for services, and they do begin to try to, you know, figure out what their service model will look like. And then we get all of that information updated so that they can officially begin offering those services. This year, my team started a collaboration with Early Childhood for on-site screening for the sites that had their own administrator so that I could coordinate with them. They were able to share with us a very extensive list of lots of families and students that are multilingual. So we've already reached out to hundreds of rising kindergartners. And like I said, some of them decided, nope, they know English, and they updated their official form, and we don't screen students in that case. So a lot of students who would normally not be screened before school started will be able to get services right when school starts because of that collaboration. If you're working with families that don't have students in early childhood programs in JCPS, they can call the number that's on that screen. That's to my front office, my front desk, and we'll get them scheduled for an appointment. And I will take questions if we have them.
We're actually going to hold on just a second for questions, Amy. If you
Okay.
do have questions, feel free to stay on, but we do want to give people the feedback form and an opportunity to complete the feedback form so that if there are folks who need to leave, we know we're right at time. So if there it goes. Thanks, Ashley. The link is in chat for our feedback form, or you can grab this QR code if you have your phone handy. And while people are completing the feedback form, you can put questions for Amy in chat. Yes, Emily, we'll share it again in just a second. And everybody will receive these slides. We will send these out to everybody. The JCPS ESL intake number is also in the calendar. It is in the Countdown to Kindergarten calendar in the section around English language services. Thanks, Amy. And Amy just dropped the number in for you again. Terry, you might be the best person to answer the question in the chat. It says, oh, wait a minute, I lost it.
Yeah, I see the question is about JCPS times and how it impacts preschool classrooms. For now, the Start Smart does say that if a child is transferred to a school, whatever, if they're going to be in a school location, whatever that school's time will be the same time as preschools. I do know that schools are currently working on addressing maybe some arrival and dismissal for car riders. So similar to what some schools already have, they may have their younger students dismissed from, you know, another location in the school. So there may be some specific things that will happen at individual schools, but again, the start time for preschool classrooms, if they're in a school building, are going to be on the same schedule as whatever that school is.
I have a question about that. If somebody has children in elementary school, and in the past you could not choose your preschool school, what's going to happen with parents that have children in elementary school? And is there a way for them to choose for their preschooler to go to the same school?
That's a great question. And right now the application for preschool is not, we have not started taking applications right now. That process in the past will be similar to what it is again this year. Families apply for the program. They don't apply for specific schools.
And then I'll just add on to that, if you're talking about a rising kinder who already has siblings in a school, because there are some zone changes to which set of schools would service a particular address. So the response that I have been telling families is that we have to submit the application that matches their address and the set of schools there. But if they have a sibling that is at a different school that's not part of that group of schools, they have to first get a placement at a school, and then they have to request a transfer for either child to move, whichever their preference is. And I was told that transfers to keep siblings together were going to be prioritized. How often they've been able to do that, I can't speak to that, but that is something they're aware of and planning for.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Do we have any other questions for anybody?
Hi. I wanted just to go back to the language part. And the reason, because like you said, the parent has to advocate for the son. And the reality is that not every parent is there. And a lot of the cases with immigrants, some of them are unaccompanied. So there's nobody looking out for them.
Mhm.
And then, so then you can get held behind because you don't know the process. You don't know that you can say, no, I don't need to be held back. I can, study more and just focus on English, or, so that I can keep up with everyone. I think that there should be a better process just because of that, because there's a lot of kids going behind. And because of that, then they have the need of, why am I going to school and waste time when I'm hungry, when I have other stuff to deal with? And there's school dropouts, and it's kids that are part of our community and kids that are our future here. And that's my concern. I don't think that all of this information is amazing, like it is, but I don't think it fully applies to everyone. And I don't think it will, but it totally, besides the English part, the Spanish, I feel like it neglects other situations that are going on that are barriers in order for kids to go to school, to do what they need to do. And honestly, I'm talking from personal experience. I stayed in ESL. I didn't know I could help out. My parents were like, well, what do you need? What do you think? And I was afraid of going to the English classes. I was afraid of failing that class. So I stayed in ESL throughout the whole high school. And it was because of fear. And I think that there's a lot of kids that won't speak up. And then with the language, it helps kids not being translated for their parents. So that is a big step, to have the translation, to have a way for the parents to communicate with the teachers without the involvement of the kids, as in the kids shouldn't be the translators.
Oh, yeah, the kids should not.
Right, that is the thinking behind the new board policy, Jessica. Amy, I do have a question based on what Jessica just said. Who does, in the case of an unaccompanied minor, who does that parent intake interview? Who do you all do that with?
We actually only had one this year that we knew about, and the reason that came to be is that there was a community member who became aware of the situation, and that person advocated for the student and brought them. And we have a way of noting that in the system, and then that particular child was older and ended up at Newcomer Academy, where they have tons of trauma-informed training and lots of support there. So I can only speak to that one experience. Other than that, I would assume that it's probably going to almost always be a community member or an advocate in some way that will help that child, get the services that they need or help them navigate getting into school. I'm not sure if I answered the question exactly.
No, you did. And I do think we need to end it there for today. Like Ashley has said in the chat multiple times, we will send out these slides to everybody. We really appreciate you joining us today, and we hope that everybody got a lot of great information. Thank you all so much.
I can't even write that. I'm telling you.